Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna T540 Mark III top panel chainsaw. This thing's just not running right. We're going to replace the carburetor on it and see if it runs any different. So I'm just going to show you the steps involved in this. This is setup is a little different than the old ones. A lot more wires, and it's just a different look. So first we remove the air filter, and now we're going to remove the air filter base. And that base has got two screws that run through the carburetor and then bolted to the intake manifold. There's our carburetor. We're going to pull a fuel line off the top, the throttle cable out of its holder on the bottom, and then a single screw to remove the choke assembly. Now on the older models, this choke assembly was really flimsy, and I thought a bad design. Well, this one's built kind of the same way, but it's a bit more robust. Probably not going to break that one as easily as the version from the Mark I or Mark II saws. Now we pop the carburetor off its seat at the intake. And look at all the wires. We got two of them big white plugs full of wires. Well, we're normally used to seeing just one of those plugs. So kind of pay attention to where everything's put together, because the first time you do it, you're going to be a little bit confused about how it goes back together. Probably it wouldn't be a bad idea to, I think these interchange. I didn't try it, but I think you can mix them up. I don't know how much it matters, but you want to keep all the wires tucked away neat inside there. So there we've got the white plugs disconnected. I mean, this is a chainsaw. We got this spaghetti mess of wires in here. I mean, I'm not opposed to auto-tune, but this is what small engine repair is becoming.
Got it.
So we have one more wire tucked away behind this side panel. We'll get that out of there. And now our carburetor is just about free. I think we got a fuel line on there yet. Nope, and it's got fuel in it. Alright, new carburetor, old carburetor. There is one piece that we have to swap off the old carb. And that's the holder on top for one of those white plugs. Or both of them, actually. I'm just going to blow some schmutz off of there first. Alright, we have a couple of notches on top of the carburetor here. And those notches lock this little plastic holder in place. So if we just get up underneath that holder and pry it over one of those notches, the whole works will come apart. And then it just snaps together. Alright. Reverse order, putting it back together. We've got a fuel line on there, and now I'm kind of preloading the throttle cable on the carburetor. Snaking the wire through the side of the case. Now we can connect our computer up to that wire. And it's also a place to hook up the Husqvarna Fleet Services, I don't know what you call the little monitor or module, but it's used for like GPS tracking, things like that. Well, we are fumbling big time with these wires. But the first one with the shortest wires goes on top of that plastic holder. And then alongside that plastic holder is kind of a slot where the wires can tuck into. Right down like that. It's nice and neat once you get it in there. It's just monkeying around figuring out how it's supposed to be. Taking a picture of this before it comes apart probably isn't a bad idea. And then there's a little holder for the second white connector. Now we're going to try and push the whole works up against the intake. Alright, we got the thing flush up against the intake. Just kind of taking a look here and making sure that it is flush. We don't have any wires caught between the carburetor and the orange body of the saw. There's another spot where there's a little holder for the wire. They kind of provided some decent routing for the wires and hoses on here for the most part. Just making sure that's all tucked in there decent. Fuel line, and then our choke lever assembly, which is now technically a start lever or start switch, because this Mark III will run on full choke. Auto-tune will compensate for that. I think the idea there was to try and get the saws tuned so that they'll start better when they're hot. If the person has the same starting procedure, hot or cold, and auto-tune compensates for it, you know, that was the idea, I think. Because they did get a bad rap about warm restarts back in the beginning. And not just the T540, but I'm talking about all auto-tune models. So we continue to route our hoses and wires. And now we have our air filter adapter. And you got to get, you know, it'll go either way. And I put it on here wrong the first time. I had it upside down. This is the correct way. And the nub that the air filter goes over, that's in the middle there, it's on the same kind of angle as the air filter cover will be. Well, a little bit of a function check here. Everything seems to be working right. These hoses, you want to keep them tucked down in there so that the air filter is not pinching that hose against that cover for the access to the spark plug. Alright, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. A new auto-tune carburetor has no firmware in it and needs to have it installed. And I'm not thinking about that right now when I put this cover on here. I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to fire this thing up and see if it runs. It won't run. It needs the firmware installed, and I'll have to do that here yet. Now I'm using the fuel that came out of this tank because I don't want to change two different things at once and then not know what the problem was. So I'm changing the carburetor but not the fuel. Here's the realization. It ain't gonna run like this. Yeah. So we gotta put some firmware in this carburetor. This is the new Husqvarna Service Hub adapter for connecting auto tune or connecting to Husqvarna riding mowers and such. So first we have a cable that goes from the box to the saw, and then a cable that goes from the box to the computer. And there's a couple of green lights on this thing, one on each end, and they're both green. That means they're both connected. I did all my firmware updates here, and now I'm taking it back apart. If you want to see how that firmware update is done, a couple weeks ago I did a video on doing just that, so you can scroll back in the videos and find it. Alright, so we're gonna give this thing a start and see if it runs, and if it does, then that's all I'm gonna have for you on the Husqvarna T540 Mark III carburetor swap. Thanks for watching. Later.